everyone. So exciting because we've now reached our mistakes managers make number 2. So remember, we are going through a series of the 10 most common mistakes that managers, owners and directors make in our industry, the spa, wellness and aesthetics industry and salon industry. So this is quite an interesting one, and in a minute we are going to go over to have a quick interview with Andy BARGE, who was formerly the director of spa for the Six Senses group in Ibiza. He's got some exciting new ventures that he's about to embark on, but Andy has many years of experience when managing spa staff. And his mistake when we discussed it is super interesting. So just to prep you for it, have you ever had a staff member, or do you currently have a staff member that seems to annoy you, if I can put it in inverted commas, irritate you somehow? And the reasons they do is small little things. Like, let me give you an example. You will make a comment or ask for a volunteer, and this is the response you get. So, yes, rolling of eyes, or requested to do something, or you're chatting in your morning huddle and you get a kind of look, folded arms, that type of huffing and puffing kind of body language, or that therapist that makes those little jokes that have this annoying underlying truth to them. Does that sound familiar to any of you? I'm sure it does. So Andy's most common mistake for him, his biggest mistake that he's ever made, he's going to share with us in a minute. And it has to do with exactly what I've just told you about. So yes, let's head on over and hear what Andy has to say to us. And then the best part of this series, everyone, is Andy's going to give us the solution. So remember, these series of the top 10 mistakes is all about giving us the tools to either avoid these mistakes or how to deal with them really quickly so that we move on and focus on what's important in our business. Let's go chat to Andy.
So, hello everybody, and today we are so privileged to be able to speak to a long-standing, well, I don't know how long-standing, but somebody who's become a great colleague to me. I cannot wait to meet him in person. I've learned absolutely so much from Andy and all of his best practices that he's been so open to share with us. Yes, and he's really what I'm going to term the produce of lockdown, because that's when we came into contact with each other. And yes, ever since then, Andy's been adding so much value to our community. So Andy has an amazing career history. His latest project and contract that he's finished is quite incredible. He's been the director of spa with the Six Senses group, and he was privileged enough to be able to go and stay in Ibiza for a little while. So that's quite exciting. And with that project under his belt, and many others, Andy is, I'm waiting in bated breath to hear what he has next on his plate. So how are you doing, Andy?
Hello, I'm really good, thank you. Thanks for asking, and thanks for the lovely introduction. It's always great to work with you, and I look forward to meeting you as well.
Yes, I can't wait. I might be going to the UK in March, so if I do, I will let you know, and we will definitely have a meetup. So Andy, what this is all about, as I've shared with you already, is we're interviewing top spa professionals from around the world. And our aim with this is to provide our community and our members with tools, valuable tools that they would not normally have had. So they would have to learn and get the t-shirt, as people call it, make the mistakes and get the t-shirt, been there, done that kind of thing. So we are trying to perhaps avoid that or give them the tools to fix those mistakes if they found themselves in it quickly. So my question to you today is, in your career, what has been your biggest mistake that you've made as a director or manager?
Okay, it is a great question. And I was thinking about this because there's quite a few things I've done, and the majority of my experience and learning now is through mistakes, right? But I think one of the ones I wanted to talk about was something that probably took me a long time to get right after trying different tactics to do it. And it was the issue of attitudes, and let's say negative attitudes with staff and the team. And I think the issue with it is that it's when you've got an attitude problem where someone is, say, a good performer or a very good performer, even in some instances, but their attitude isn't so bad that it's obviously a problem. Like, for example, if you had someone who was, say, being rude directly to a guest, that's kind of easy to deal with because it's like a black and white issue. But I'm talking more about when you've got that person who is sort of, sometimes they come in and oh no, they're in a bit of a mood. And then with the other team members, they're kind of a bit prickly or slightly off or slightly standoffish. So this is the overview. And I think it's kind of a 2-for-1 answer because there's a couple of mistakes in here that revolve around the same thing. So I'll talk about that.
Wow. Okay. So that sounds interesting. Would somebody, so I just want to classify perhaps another person that might fit into there, somebody that's a really good performer and arrives late, for example, to morning meetings without apologizing because they almost feel a little bit more important because they're so good. Does that sort of fall into the same kind of category?
Can be. It depends. Yeah. It's that can be related to it when, say, their attitude is, they're not repentant about it. And if they're a prickly person, as a manager or a supervisor, you might be thinking, do I talk about this because they've had a good reason? So it can fall into that, but it's more to do with, say, when you've got someone in and there's normal day-to-day business going on, and this person reacts in a certain negative way, which you either don't like and then has a detrimental effect on the other team. And it can be anything from, let's say you have a therapist and you're changing a treatment, and there's a therapist, they don't like things to be changed last minute. And when this happens, and this always happens from time to time through a guest request or a problem, and their reaction can be, it can be as simple as that when they do it. Because this is a negative reaction to another team member. Let's say this happens and your receptionist does it and the therapist does it every time, then the receptionist will then know, they think twice about doing it when it's a necessary thing. And they're not thinking twice from a business perspective. They're thinking twice from, okay, I don't want to have this reaction, which is something different.
Okay, got it. Okay, so I'm assuming that you've either fixed it or you have some ideas to give us on how to fix it. So let's hear it.
Well, I'll tell you the mistakes I did first was one, was ignoring it. So I think in my early career, you had this, and again, it was a good performer, a prickly person. They were like this. They would be coming in, not arguing with the reception, but doing behavior like this, where they're moaning, complaining about basic things being moved or shifts being changed. If they ask them to stay late, they sort of dig in and complain. Now, because it wasn't, as I said, a horrible, rude reaction, nothing completely black and white, it's like, okay, everyone's dealing with it, everyone's working around it, it's generally fine, and we can put up with this. And I didn't really say anything. What I was saying was things like, are you okay? You don't seem happy. And they would say, oh, no, I'm fine. Oh, is everything okay at home? Yeah, it's all good. Right. And then what I was actually doing, I was ignoring it because it wasn't a clearly defined behavior. And I was trying to look at what was on the inside. And actually the problem, you see, is that you don't know what's going on. Like, the only person who knows what's going inside of you is you.
Correct.
So you're trying to fix that behavior from looking at, are you happy or not? Okay, so you leave it, and then leave it for a while, and then what happens is imagine everyone else is good, and so you're better behaved people, they start to get aggravated because nothing's happening with this person. So their day-to-day work became a bit more stressful, they didn't like it as much. And then a consequence of this was specifically the overtime situation. So let's say you have problems or you need extra work in a day. If I have two therapists, one is the angel, and then one is this aggravating, we'll call the devil. When there's someone who needs to stay late, the receptionist would always ask the nice one because they get the easier reaction. So what happened was the nice one starts to get overworked because they're more willing to do it. So they always get asked. Then they started to get upset or slightly annoyed that why is it I'm getting asked all the time eventually. So they stop doing it. They start getting overworked. And then this causes problem. So that was part one of the mistake. So then I myself was also getting frustrated with this person because this behavior is going on. It wasn't defined. So I pulled them into my office and then sat them down and said, okay, there's a problem with your attitude. It needs to stop. And then of course they're like, oh, why me? And then I said, I'm sick of this behavior, and it escalated. And it escalated because typically people with attitudes like that also are the ones that burst off fastest, right?
Yeah.
And for me, because I'd had this growing frustration and not confronted it properly and in the right way earlier, it kind of exploded. And although we did resolve it later, as you can see, the issue, I think it's quite a common issue in every single spa I've had since then. There's always something like this.
Okay.
Yeah, so I've got some information how to avoid this.
Oh, lovely. I think it sounds very familiar to me with most of the owners and managers that I deal with. And in fact, even in some of the spas that I'm directly involved in. So I'm eager beaver to hear, like I'm sure everybody else is. So help us out. Yeah,
so it was after many trials and errors. What I came to realize is that you have to, it's focusing on the behavior, not the internal feelings. So like you can manage anything. If you're managing sales, it's about sales performance. If you're managing people, it's about people performance. If you're managing cleanliness, there's certain standards you expect. When you say, like if you want, okay, I want the spa clean, you would normally have a procedure and say, okay, when you clean, you should use this, do that, do this 3 times a day, do that, etc. With behavior, it's exactly the same. So it doesn't matter what's going on inside somebody. You can define the behavior that you expect when things happen. So you basically got a 5-step process with this. So when you have something that you don't like, the first thing is you have to be specific about the behavior that you don't like. So if say, we'll call her Sarah. If Sarah is doing this when you ask her something, that's the behavior you say. So you don't say, oh, you look unhappy. You say, look, anytime we ask you something that you don't like, you put your arms together and sigh. Okay, you say it. So it's a specific behavior. Then the second thing, you then need to explain what the behavior does and why it's detrimental. So you might say, Sarah, so when you do this, it makes people, including myself, not want to approach you when I have an issue or I need something from you. Okay. So again, you've defined the behavior. You've explained why the behavior is detrimental and what it does. Third thing, and then you can explain, you can make reference to the performance requirements and then the best practice from that. So you can say, if I don't approach you, then there's certain things that aren't getting done, certain tasks that won't be done, and you won't grow as a person. And then what happens then, we give these tasks to other people, and it's not fair for the rest of your team that they're doing this. Number 4 is then defining the replacement behavior. So what is a replacement behavior? So it's very simple. If someone comes and asks you something, I expect you to listen. You don't have to agree to it, but you can act like an adult and say, yes, I will do it, or no, I don't want to do it because of this, not the behavior. And then number 5 is simply about following up. And this is one of the most important things, because often these are quite an uncomfortable conversation to have, especially initially, certainly for me. Later you think, oh, okay, I've done it, I've told her. But then all these performance expectations, you have to manage it. And whether it's you or if you have managers or supervisors to do that, they should be the ones to monitor. And the person involved, like in this case, Sarah, should be the one who is giving you self-feedback on how they're behaving.
Got it. Wow. Okay. So that's quite simple. 5 steps. I like it.
Yes.
And I can identify with the whole behavior thing, like find what the actual thing is that they're doing that you don't like. So that's amazing. Okay. Well, I think everybody can learn from that. I think it is a very common, what shall we call it? A common thing that happens in fact, not only in spa businesses, but in all businesses for that matter.
I think as well,
that sounds amazing.
I would also add, it is common, and I think it sounds simple, and it is a simple thing in principle. The key thing is just doing it fast. Don't delay it. And this was over time and tweaking things and working out. The other thing is sometimes they don't accept it, and they might give excuses. They say, oh, this has happened, that's happened, this is normal. You say, oh, they did this, they did that. That might also come up. And again, you separate that completely and say, okay, we'll investigate this. I understand what's going on at home. However, I still expect this behavior.
Okay. Well, that sounds amazing. And then earlier on when we chatted, you said that we could sort of turn it into an SOP. Would that still be okay? And then we can give everybody this 5-step plan in writing with a couple of examples. So I'll write it up, and then maybe you can check it out. And I'd like to give them more actual examples, because that's really when you solidify how to fix it. Sound good?
Absolutely. I can give you. I'll give you some examples of these different types of people as well. Like there's different sort of attitudes, and we can put this in as a brief guide, so they get an example of, okay, if somebody's like that, this is how you deal with it.
I love it. Okay. Oh, Andy, thank you so much for your time.
Anytime.
And you always have golden nuggets, so thanks again, and then we'll chat soon.
Okay, great. Take care.
Super. Take care. All the best. Ciao.